When Rachel moved back to Portland after years of living in Chicago, she thought the hardest part would be adjusting to the quiet. Her life in the city had been busy, full of constant work and noise. And returning to her late parents' old home felt like stepping into another lifetime. The wooden porch still creaked the same way it did when she was a teenager, and the maple tree in the yard still dropped its leaves across the walkway every fall. Yet everything around her felt heavier now, quieter, lonelier. Her husband Mark was a good man, patient, gentle, and always trying to make things right. But the last 2 years had pulled them apart in ways neither wanted to admit. His job as an engineer demanded constant travel, sometimes weeks away at a time. What used to be quick airport hugs and long late-night calls had slowly turned into silence and polite check-ins. They loved each other, but distance had turned that love into something fragile, like glass that could crack at any moment. So when her sister Lily called one evening and said, "Evan's starting college near you. Could you look out for him? Maybe let him visit sometimes." Rachel had said yes immediately. Her nephew had always been like the younger brother she never had, curious, clever, and full of questions about life. She hadn't seen him much since he turned 18. And the idea of family around the house again felt like a gift. Evan's first visit was on a Saturday afternoon. He arrived carrying a backpack, a box of books, and the same bright smile she remembered from his childhood. "Aunt Rachel," he said, hugging her with the ease of family. He smelled faintly of coffee and rain. Wow, this place hasn't changed at all. They spent the day catching up, cooking pasta, and talking about his classes. He was studying architecture and spoke with excitement about design, cities, and the feeling of building something that lasts. She saw a lot of herself in him, the same ambition, the same longing to prove something. That night after he left, Rachel found herself smiling again for the first time in weeks. She realized how much she'd missed simple company, someone to talk to, someone to laugh with. Days went by, and his visits became more frequent. He'd stop by after class sometimes just to grab a meal or do laundry, and she'd make coffee while they talked. Mark knew, of course. She told him about Evan's visits over their occasional phone calls. He was glad, said it was good she had family nearby. But still, the calls were short and the distance between them grew longer. One afternoon, while a storm rattled the windows, Evan dropped by unexpectedly. His face looked tired, pale. "Can I stay here tonight?" he asked quietly. "My apartment lost power and finals are next week. I can't afford to fall behind." "Course," Rachel said. "You don't even have to ask." She made him tea, set up the guest room, and listened while he vented about exams and stress. She found herself comforting him the way she used to when he was a little boy, reminding him that setbacks don't last forever. That evening, she sat by the piano in the living room, playing soft notes against the sound of the rain. It was something she hadn't done in months. Music had always helped her breathe, helped her feel. Evan came down the stairs quietly, listening. "I didn't know you played this well," he said. Rachel smiled. "It's just something I do when I need to think." "It's beautiful," he said. And for a moment, she felt seen, not as someone's wife or someone's aunt, but simply as herself. The next morning, she woke early, the storm finally gone. She made breakfast and left for the grocery store, leaving a note on the counter for Evan. When she came back, her husband's car was in the driveway. She froze. Mark hadn't said he'd be home. She walked inside, bag still in hand, to find him sitting at the kitchen table, his coat still wet from travel. Evan was across from him, looking nervous. "Rachel," Mark said, his tone calm but sharp, "I just got back. Evan said you'd been helping him out a lot." She smiled carefully. "Of course. He's family." Mark nodded, but there was something behind his eyes she couldn't read. He wasn't angry, just distant, as though he'd walked into a story he didn't quite understand. The tension lingered for days. Mark stayed home longer than usual, working remotely. He didn't question her directly, but his silences spoke enough. When Evan visited again later that week, he could sense the change. "He thinks something's wrong, doesn't he?" Evan asked softly as they washed dishes. "He's just tired," she replied, though the words felt thin dot later that evening. Rachel sat in the living room, sketching on her notepad. She had begun designing again, something she hadn't done since her art school days. Drawing helped her think. Evan came over, saw her sketches, and said, "You should do this more. You're amazing." She laughed, brushing him off, but the encouragement warmed her. Then, just as she was packing away her drawings, the door opened. Mark had returned early from the store. He froze for a second, seeing them close together by the table, sketches scattered around, laughter midair. His expression hardened slightly, though he said nothing. Evan excused himself soon after. When the door closed, the silence between Rachel and Mark felt endless. "I didn't realize he was here again," Mark said quietly. "He came by to help me with something," she answered. "I see." He paused. "Rachel, I know you wouldn't do anything wrong, but I feel like I've been gone too long." His words carried no accusation, only sorrow. Rachel didn't know what to say. She looked at him, realizing that the man she'd once built dreams with was now a stranger standing in her kitchen. That night, she couldn't sleep. The rain returned, tapping against the window like questions she couldn't answer. She thought about how easily misunderstanding could grow between people, how distance didn't always come from miles, but from silence. The next morning, Evan stopped by again, unaware of the tension. Rachel tried to act normal, but the unease lingered. They sat on the couch with coffee when suddenly the front door creaked open again. "Rachel." Mark's voice came from the hallway. He had forgotten his laptop earlier and had come back to get it. Evan stood up quickly, startled, knocking over his mug. Coffee spilled across the carpet. Rachel bent down to clean it, her hands trembling. Mark entered just in time to see the scene. His wife on the floor, Evan kneeling beside her, both reaching for the same towel. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The silence was thick, the kind that could break something fragile if held too long. "I should go," Evan muttered, stepping back. He grabbed his jacket and left without meeting Mark's eyes. The door closed behind him, and Rachel sat there frozen, feeling a kind of dread she couldn't explain. Mark sighed quietly. "Rachel," he said after a long pause, "I think we need to talk." She looked up at him, eyes filled with tears she hadn't realized were there. "I know," she whispered, but before they could speak another word, thunder rolled outside, and with it came the memory of every moment they had let pass unspoken. That night, Rachel sat alone at the window, her reflection blurred against the glass. The words Mark had said earlier kept replaying in her head. "I know you wouldn't do anything wrong." She wished she could believe it as easily as he had said it. The morning after the misunderstanding, the house felt heavier than ever. Rachel woke up to the smell of coffee, but she didn't move from bed right away. She could hear Mark in the kitchen, moving quietly as if not to disturb her. It wasn't anger that filled the air, it was something worse, distance. The kind that grows quietly, without argument, until two people find themselves living like strangers under the same roof. When she finally walked in, he gave a small smile, polite and tired. "I made you some coffee," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes told a different story. "Thanks," she replied, sitting down across from him. Neither spoke for a long time. The only sound was the soft hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock on the wall. Finally, Mark sighed and looked at her. "Rachel, I know I've been gone a lot. I know it's been hard, but I feel like I don't even know what's going on anymore." She looked down, tracing the rim of her cup. "There's nothing going on, Mark. You know me better than that." He nodded slowly. "I do. But when I came in yesterday, it just looked strange, and I hate that I even thought twice about it." His honesty cut through her defenses. She reached across the table and placed her hand on his. "Mark, I'd never betray you. She stopped. The truth sat in her chest like a stone. "I just miss us. That's all." He squeezed her hand, his expression softening. "I miss us too." For a brief moment, it felt like a bridge had formed again, fragile but real. Later that day, Mark packed his bags for another short work trip. He kissed her on the forehead before leaving, and for the first time in weeks, she felt hope. Maybe they could still fix things. But the silence that followed after he left reminded her how much work that hope would take. That evening, Evan texted her, I'm sorry about what happened. I didn't mean to make things awkward, she replied quickly. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Take care of your exams. He didn't answer right away. Then, after a pause, he sent another message. You've always been the person I look up to, Aunt Rachel. I hate that I caused you trouble. Rachel smiled faintly at her phone. There was innocence in his words, a kind of affection that came from respect, not anything improper. Still, she couldn't ignore how easily small moments could be misunderstood. Over the next week, she focused on work, trying to fill the silence in the house with productivity. But late at night, when the wind brushed against the window and the rooms echoed with emptiness, her thoughts returned to that awkward afternoon, the look in Mark's eyes, the confusion, the unspoken worry. Then, on Thursday, Evan called. His voice was low and tense. Aunt Rachel, can I come over? Just for a bit. Is everything okay? She asked. He hesitated. Not really. I had an argument with a friend, and I just need to clear my head. Rachel didn't think twice. Of course. Come over. When he arrived, it was late, the streetlights glowing outside, rain falling in soft sheets. He stood at the doorway, his jacket soaked, his expression tired. Sorry, he said. I didn't know where else to go. You don't need to apologize, she said, handing him a towel. You're always welcome here. They sat in the living room, the fireplace flickering between them. Evan stared into the flames. You ever feel like you're trying so hard to be someone everyone expects you to be, but you're just tired? Rachel nodded slowly. Every day. He smiled weakly. I guess we're both a little lost then. For a while, they just sat there in silence. Then Evan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I heard what Mark said that day. I shouldn't have stayed so long. I didn't mean to cause any problems. Evan, you didn't, she said firmly. Mark S. Just tired, we both are. But it's not your fault. He looked up, eyes filled with concern. You and Uncle Mark are going to be okay, right? She wanted to say yes, but the words stuck in her throat. I don't know, she admitted softly. That honesty hung between them like a quiet truth neither wanted to face. After a few minutes, Evan stood. I should go. It's getting late. She walked him to the door and just as he turned to leave, said, You know, Aunt Rachel, you're one of the strongest people I know. I hope Mark realizes how lucky he is. His words struck her deeper than he probably intended. Thank you, she said, her voice barely a whisper. After he left, Rachel stood by the window, watching the rain blur the streetlights. She wasn't sure what hurt more, the loneliness or the realization that someone outside her marriage could see her more clearly than her own husband did. The next morning, Mark called from the road. His tone was warmer than before. Hey, he said, I was thinking maybe when I'm back we could take a trip. Just the two of us. Get away from all the noise. Rachel smiled, relief washing over her. I'd like that. But before they could talk longer, his voice cut off. Static filled the line, then silence. She tried calling back, but the call didn't go through. The storm outside had worsened, and the news later reported heavy flooding near the highway. For hours, she sat by the phone, waiting. Finally, around midnight, the phone rang again. Rachel, Mark said, his voice faint but steady. I'm fine. Just stopped at a motel. Roads are closed. She exhaled, tears of relief slipping down her face. You scared me. I'm sorry, he said softly. I didn't mean to. That night, she barely slept, thinking about how fragile everything was, how one misunderstanding, one missed call, one bad day could make or break a relationship. A few days later, Mark returned home. The first thing he did was hug her. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a quiet, genuine embrace that said more than words could. I've been thinking a lot, he said. About us. About how I let work take over everything. I don't want to lose you, Rachel. She looked at him, eyes wet. Then stop being gone all the time. Be here, really here. He nodded. I will. For a few weeks, it felt like things were finally changing. They cooked together, laughed more, and began to rebuild what had been lost. But one afternoon, while Rachel was cleaning the kitchen, her phone buzzed, a message from Evan. Hey, Aunt Rachel. Just wanted to thank you for being there that night. You always make things feel calmer. It was innocent enough. But when Mark saw the message pop up on her screen, his expression tightened again. He didn't say anything right away, but she could feel the shift, that same quiet distance returning later. As they sat on the couch, he finally asked, "Do you still talk to him a lot?" She frowned. "He's family, Mark. Of course I do." "I know," he said, looking away. "It's just, after everything, maybe give it a little space." Rachel felt a flash of hurt. "Space? He's my nephew, Mark. He comes to me when he needs advice. That's all." He nodded but didn't respond. The silence grew again, and she realized how hard it was to rebuild trust once it had cracked, even slightly. That night she sat on the porch under the stars, thinking about how easily people misunderstood each other, how love could exist right beside doubt. She didn't blame Mark. In his place, she might have felt the same. But it broke her heart that after years of loyalty, one innocent moment could make everything feel uncertain. When she finally went inside, Mark was asleep on the couch, the TV still playing softly. She turned it off, covered him with a blanket, and whispered, "We'll find our way back. I promise." Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain again, a quiet reminder that even storms eventually pass, but they always leave a mark. The weeks after the quiet argument were strangely calm. Rachel went about her days as if life had finally settled, but underneath her heart carried the weight of unspoken things. Mark was trying. She could see it in the small gestures, the extra effort to be home on time, the way he now lingered at breakfast instead of rushing out. But something between them had shifted forever. Something subtle yet deeply real. It was early spring when everything took a new turn. Rachel had decided to host a small family gathering, something to bring warmth back into the house. She invited her sister, Evan, and a few cousins. The house felt alive again that weekend, laughter echoing through the rooms, the smell of home-cooked food filling the air, and the old piano in the corner playing soft melodies from their childhood. Evan arrived last, carrying a small bouquet. "For you," he said, handing it to her with a shy smile. "Thank you," Rachel said warmly. "They're beautiful." Mark greeted him with polite warmth, though there was still that invisible wall between them. Rachel noticed but didn't comment. She just hoped that time would heal what words hadn't. The evening went smoothly at first. Stories were shared, memories revived, and for a while everything felt simple again. But later that night, after everyone had eaten and most guests had left, only Rachel, Mark, and Evan remained in the living room. The rain outside had returned, tapping gently against the windows. Mark got up to clear the dishes. "You two sit. I'll take care of this," he said, almost too quickly. Rachel felt a twinge of guilt watching him when he disappeared into the kitchen. Evan leaned closer and whispered, "He's trying, you know. Uncle Mark. He really is." Rachel looked at him, surprised. "You think so?" He nodded. "I can tell. He looks at you like he's scared to lose you." Her chest tightened at the truth in those words. "We've been through a lot," she said quietly, "but I want to believe we'll be okay." Evan smiled softly. "You will be." But just as he said that, Mark re-entered, and from his point of view, all he saw was Rachel and Evan sitting close, her hand briefly touching his in gratitude. It was nothing more than a simple human gesture. But to someone still battling insecurity, it looked like history repeating itself. He froze at the doorway. For a second, no one spoke. The sound of the rain seemed louder than ever. Rachel noticed him first. "Mark, you okay?" He blinked, his voice even. "Yeah, just thought I saw something." Evan quickly stood. "Uncle Mark, I should probably get going anyway. It's getting late." Mark didn't stop him. He just nodded, forcing a small smile. After the door closed, the silence returned. Rachel turned to him. "You think I'd do something wrong again, don't you?" he sighed. "No. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration in his eyes. "I don't know why I keep feeling like I'm losing you." Rachel walked closer. You're not losing me, Mark. You're losing trust in yourself, in us. And that's what's tearing us apart. That night, neither of them slept much. They didn't fight, but they didn't talk either. The next morning, Mark left early for a meeting. Rachel stayed behind, her thoughts tangled between anger, sadness, and exhaustion. Later that afternoon, as she sat on the porch sipping coffee, Evan's mother called. "Rachel, I wanted to thank you for having him over last night," she said cheerfully. "He came home happier than I've seen him in months." Rachel smiled faintly. "He's a good kid. He just needed some family time." But then her sister added something that made her pause. "He mentioned he felt bad again for causing tension before. Said he hopes you and Mark worked things out." Rachel's heart softened. Despite all the awkwardness, Evan had only ever meant well. 2 days later, Mark came home early, unexpectedly. He looked calmer this time, more grounded. "Can we talk?" he asked. They sat in the living room where so many of their unspoken feelings seemed to live. Mark took a deep breath. "I've been thinking. I realized something. It's not you I don't trust. It's me. I've been so focused on work, on success, that I forgot what really mattered. I left you alone too often and then blamed you for the distance I created." Rachel's eyes filled. "Mark," he continued, "I saw you with Evan last night, and for a moment I felt that same jealousy again. But then I remembered how patient you've been. You could have given up, but you didn't. You stayed." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Because I love you, Mark. I never stopped." He reached for her hand and held it tightly. "Then let's stop letting fear win. Let's start over. No secrets, no distance." That night they cooked dinner together, laughing softly as they burned the first batch of pasta. It wasn't a magical fix, but it was a start, a real one. A few weeks later, Evan stopped by again, this time with his girlfriend, Sarah. He looked happier, more grown up. And when he saw Rachel and Mark together, he smiled knowingly. "You two look better," he said. Mark grinned. "We're getting there." Evan chuckled. "Told you everything would work out." That simple comment made Rachel realize how much had changed. The misunderstandings, the doubt, the silence, all of it had led them back to a deeper kind of love. One that wasn't built on perfection, but forgiveness. As the evening ended and everyone left, Rachel walked Mark to the porch. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink as the sun dipped low. She leaned her head against his shoulder. "You know," she whispered, "for a while I thought we were done." Mark wrapped his arm around her. "We almost were. But sometimes you have to lose sight of something to really see it again." They stood there quietly, listening to the distant sound of cars and the soft chirping of crickets. Later that week, Rachel received a message from Evan. It read, "Thank you for everything, Aunt Rachel. I'm glad you and Uncle Mark are okay. I learned something from you that love isn't about being perfect. It's about being patient." She smiled as she read it, realizing that despite everything, the experience had brought them all closer. The misunderstanding that once threatened to break everything had instead taught them all what real love looked like. Fragile, flawed, but worth fighting for. Months passed, and their lives slowly returned to a peaceful rhythm. Mark was home more often. They took that trip they'd once talked about, a quiet cabin by a lake in Vermont. There, surrounded by calm water and pine trees, they found a new kind of peace. One morning, as they sat by the water, Rachel turned to him. "Do you ever think about how close we came to losing each other?" He nodded. "Every day. But I also think about how lucky I am that we didn't." She smiled softly. "Then maybe that's what love really is, choosing to stay, even when it's hard." He took her hand. "Then I'll keep choosing you." A gentle breeze rippled across the lake, carrying their laughter through the trees. The pain of the past hadn't vanished, but it no longer defined them. It had shaped them, made them stronger, more human, more grateful. Months later, when Evan graduated from college, he sent them a handwritten note with his invitation. Inside it, he wrote, "You both taught me something about love and forgiveness. I hope I can carry that with me always. Rachel and Mark attended his graduation, sitting proudly among the crowd. When Evan spotted them, he waved with genuine warmth. In that moment, all the awkwardness, all the tension, seemed like a distant memory. As they drove home that night, Mark reached over and took her hand. "I think we're finally okay," he said softly. Rachel looked out at the passing lights and smiled. "Yeah," she whispered. "We are." And for the first time in a long time, she believed it completely.